The purpose of fear is to escape. The purpose of anger is to attack. So if you think about something that happened to you when you were 10 years of age and your heart starts beating in your chest, that's because your mind thinks you need to run, but it thinks you're 10 years of age. Your subconscious has no connection to time. So everything is now. So memory is seen now in real time.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion. Thank you so much for being here. You are in for a treat. Dr. Don Wood is an author, speaker, founder, and CEO of the Inspired Performance Institute and creator of the patented TIPP method, TIPP. TIPP is a cutting-edge method inspired and developed through the newest development in neuroscience and designed to clear away the effect of disturbing or traumatic events, repurpose old patterns, and set an individual's mind up for peak performance. In essence, reboots the brain's stuck thought patterns, making it possible to enhance alpha oscillation with a non-invasive and effective shift in brainwave activity. Author of 2 top-selling books, Emotional Concussion and You Must Be Out of Your Mind. In this episode, we talked about his process, what his success rate, and how people heal from addiction, heal from their trauma, make more money just by healing some traumatic events. And also, you will hear the story of why he actually developed this method. He actually wanted to help his kid, his daughter, who developed Crohn's disease, and he helped her heal it completely. And this is a disease where doctors will tell you can never be healed. And he did it just by healing her trauma, which is mind-blowing. We'll also learn about how to overcome the fear of failure, and he's going to give you a very great advice that he got at age 13 that set him for life of success. And also a simple way or simple ways to create a healthy brain and a healthy mind. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Dr. Wood, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Orion. I'm really glad. I know we tried to get this done before, so hopefully we will get it done today.
Yes, may the Lord of the Internet be with us.
Force be with us, yes.
Yes. So I'm very excited to be talking with you. You have extraordinary knowledge, and you developed this incredible system that helps many people. But before we dive in, can you share a little bit about your passion and how did you become the person that you are today?
The program really got developed because of some trauma that my daughter had experienced that we didn't know about that created a lot of physical symptoms. But I think the advantage for me in developing the program is I'd always been an entrepreneur all my life. So when my daughter presented with her Crohn's, and then she also developed a second autoimmune called idiopathic pulmonary hemosiderosis, both autoimmune, they told us there's no cure for them and there's nothing they can do for her. We'll end up with a colostomy bag for the Crohn's, and then the lung disorder potentially could be a death sentence within 5 years. So that set me off on the research. But I came in figuring how there's a problem, I want to figure out a solution to the problem. So I came in looking for that. And I think that was different. So I went back, got my degree, but it was coming in more from a business mind of there's a problem, let's fix it.
Yes. Like, when did she develop her disease, and what was the solution you found?
So when she was 14, she was diagnosed with the Crohn's. We had no idea where it came from. They told us that they don't know what causes it, that there's no cure for it. She's just going to have to learn to live and manage and cope with it. She ended up having 4 resections done where they cut out 24 inches of her intestines over 4 different operations and said eventually she'll end up with a colostomy bag. And then we got a call saying she'd been rushed to the hospital. Her lungs were filling up with blood. And so they had her in ICU for 3.5 weeks and came back and said she has another autoimmune called idiopathic pulmonary hemosiderosis. And that's where the iron in the blood gets released. So the immune system releases the iron. It's an overload issue, but it dumps the blood. So she could choke to death on her blood. And again, they said there's no cure for it. And in doing the research, that's when we discovered that she had had some trauma, some sexual abuse when she was younger that she had never shared with us. And that was sort of helpful to me to understand where the problem was starting, because all they were doing was treating the symptoms, treating the Crohn's, treating the IPH, right? That wasn't the problem. That was the symptom of the problem. So they had her on nonstop steroids. She was constantly on steroids. And then they put her on anti-anxiety meds, antidepressants. So she was on a cocktail of stuff. And they basically said, there's nothing we can do. So what I discovered when I started Orion doing the research was that this trauma, this unresolved trauma, was creating inflammation. That's the response to trauma. It's a system cell danger response to trauma. It's a danger response. Inflammation is not a problem. Chronic inflammation is the problem. It became chronic for her because it was supposed to turn on and shut off. But the problem is that trauma keeps it running on a loop and it stayed active. That's where the problem came in. So the key was to resolve the trauma, which would then reduce the inflammation, which would then end the Crohn's.
Wow. So your child had a perfect childhood with great parents, as far as you knew. And then how did you discover that she had a childhood trauma that was unrelated to the family?
It was something. So she was living in the same world I grew up in. She had a great childhood. So she was living in the world that I grew up in with parents that are very loving. We didn't yell and scream in our house, right? So when I grew up, my mother and father never raised their voice, never yelled, never hit us. So it was a very calm, nurturing environment. And I think that was the key to keeping my nervous system regulated, which kept my health in check. So I'd been healthy all my life, even as a child. I didn't have any real health issues. But what we didn't know is that there was a neighbor, a girl in the neighborhood that had been abusing her when she was 6. And if you had met her, Ryan, you'd never know it. She was very high functioning, great student. She's an actress, amazing actress. That's probably why she was so good at hiding it. She was a great actress. And so she never told us about it. And as you know, with so many people, when you meet them, there's so much shame and guilt around it. Even for her, as good as the relationship we had, she couldn't talk about it. So she just hid it. And then again, we didn't even know it when she got the Crohn's. So we were looking for take her off of gluten, take her off of dairy, find another answer. Had we known it was the trauma, we would have gotten to the solution a lot earlier. And it wasn't until she really got the second disorder that she then disclosed it.
Oh, wow. So she came and she told you. Oh, wow. Wow. At what age did she tell you about it?
She had to have been in her early 20s. So she suffered with this Crohn. Like I said, she was in and out of the hospital constantly having those resections done. That poor child really suffered. And there was nothing we could do, right? We took her off of gluten, took her off of dairy, changed her diet, did everything, but there was nothing that was going to work. And what I believe is the root of the problem was the trauma. That's what they never ever addressed.
That's incredible. Um, and so you found out that you had this trauma, and then how did you come up with the process that you use to heal people?
So what I started doing the research, and I started realizing that on the physical symptoms, they were just managing it. And then I said, okay, so if trauma is the root cause, how are they treating trauma? Well, pretty much the same way. They manage it. You have anxiety, we're going to give you anti-anxiety meds. You have depression, we're going to give you antidepressants. And we're going to send you to a therapist to talk to about it. What I said was, it's a glitch. It's an error message. This trauma is running in real time. So the subconscious part of your mind operates in the present. It's looking at trauma in real time. So if your mind thinks that you're in danger and going to be hurt, it makes perfect sense that it would create a response to it. And what I always say is if you have an emotion, a feeling, or a sensation, your mind is calling for an action. That's the purpose of an emotion. The purpose of fear is to escape. The purpose of anger is to attack. So if you think about something that happened to you when you were 10 years of age and your heart starts beating in your chest, that's because your mind thinks you need to run, but it thinks you're 10 years of age. Your subconscious has no connection to time. So everything is now. So memory is seen now in real time.
Yes. So why is that a child has a trauma at 6, but then she developed a disease at 15? Why didn't the response to trauma showed up in earlier age?
I think it just depends. She probably had a lot of mitigating. She was in a very nurturing home, so maybe it didn't show up till much later. So that I really don't know why. I just know it's going to show up sometime in some physical symptom. And the ACEs study that was done by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente in 1997 made a direct connection out of a study of 17,000 people to ACEs, adverse childhood experiences or traumas, to physical and emotional health. And there's absolutely a direct line between the two. So the more ACEs, the more trauma, the bigger the medical or physical issues are going to be.
Wow, I'm thinking about my life, of course. We all think about ourselves. And I'm like, I've been through so much trauma and I've done a lot of healing modalities. But man, I've been through a lot since I was in my mom's belly. Is it like a domino effect where you heal one trauma and it heals others, or do we have to keep working on those traumas for the rest of our lives?
No, that's the great thing that I did discover is that once we get two or three of these traumas starting the process of resolving, the part of the brain, the thalamus, is sort of the relay center for information. Once it gets this information, it continues to process it. So it's going to process even the unresolved trauma that we never even talked about and basically update that at the same time. It's pretty amazing. As you know, our minds and bodies are designed to heal. We've been designed to heal, right? What's interfering with the healing? It's stuck, right? Just like a computer gets stuck. So we can get frustrated at our computer because the little pinwheel is spinning in the middle of the computer, or we can
We
just
call it
reboot
the rainbow wheel of death.
it. That's right. But all we really need to do is reboot it.
Yes. Okay. So how do you reboot your clients? What's if someone wants to come and work with you, what's the process like?
So I take them basically through a 4 hour process. So it runs anywhere from 4 to 5 hours, and it's a continuous process. So the first 2 hours are really on the science and education. So what I'll do is I'll sit down and I'll say, let me tell you how your brain is working from the research that I did. And I get this is really quite fascinating. I have people come in who even say that they don't believe this is going to help me or they don't have any trauma. And a thing I say to every single person, as I say, there's nothing wrong with you and there's nothing wrong with your mind. Your mind is running a series of error messages and glitches that are constantly interfering with your ability to perform and stay present. All we have to do is reboot the system, clear up the error messages. So a lot of people carry I'm an anxious person, I'm a depressed person, I'm an addicted person. And what I say to them, I said, that's just a symptom. That's not the problem. We need to get to the root of the problem. And if we resolve that, the symptom goes away.
Right. It's so easy to put labels on other people or on ourselves or self-diagnose and just and then we're like we're creating this very limited identity for us And because we have that identity, all our actions and all our thoughts will follow or filter through that identity, and that will reflect in our life, and that will reassure us that this identity is right, but actually we are the one who are creating it, when the truth is that we are infinite possibilities. And the truth is that we put sometimes put ourselves in a little cage, or part of us in a little cage, and say to ourselves, this is who you are, this is your space to be, and what you're doing is you just giving people that key to open up that cage and see that they are more. And what else?
And basically get back. So stop the trauma loop from running because it keeps activating the nervous system. And I never liked the word trigger. I never used that. I always thought that that sounded like a negative, violent word. And I said, your mind isn't negative and violent. It's trying to protect you. So it's activating your nervous system. Your fight or flight response is a perfectly designed system. It's designed to turn on when there's a threat and shut off when there's no threat. So that system works perfect in the animal world, but does not work as well in the human world because we store traumatic memory. And that keeps activating the system.
Right, especially because in the wild, your stress is very short-lived. The tiger is chasing you, and then you escape, and then you're done. You go back to the meadow and do whatever you need to do. But here, stress is a constant thing, so we're constantly under this fight or flight reaction that doesn't serve us.
And that's what I say is the fight or flight response is an emergency management system. But for humans, it's turned into an operating system.
Right, the default.
Yeah, it was not supposed to be an operating system. It's supposed to just be on and off, depending on the circumstance. But memory keeps activating it and turning it on. That's going to create physical and emotional stress. And then that's going to break down the body, and it's also going to affect the mind. So what I found is not only does unresolved trauma create inflammation, it also compromises the immune system and compromises the neurotransmitters. So if your immune system's compromised, you're going to get sick. And if your neurotransmitters are compromised, you're going to feel bad. And so if you don't address, so you can try to put in something to chemically change the brain, like what they do with what I say depression is a function of the brain, not a dysfunction. It's shutting down to protect you, not to hurt you. But what the solution is to put people on SSRIs to pump up their serotonin to make them feel better. Well, that's painting over rust because you're not fixing the problem. When the medication wears off, right, it's going
The
to go
rust is
back
still
into
there.
the rust is still there.
Yes.
So what you have to do is sand it down, prime it, and then paint it.
Mm-hmm. So for the first 2 hours, you sit with people and you talk to them about the brain. And then what happens in the second half?
Then the second half, we get into some traumatic events. I'll ask them for 3 events in their lifetime that they would consider either traumatic or disturbing. And what I say is not everything falls under the big T type of trauma. So I wrote in my second book, I called it emotional concussions, because sometimes they're just emotional concussions, right? But they have an effect on the way we operate. So as long as the emotional concussion is running, it's going to affect the way the brain works, the mind works. So what I'm able to do is in that next hour, I'll say, can you think of 2 or 3 events in your lifetime that fit that? And we're going to reset them. And so the way I explain it is, so Orion, if I asked you what you ate for dinner last night, can you tell me what you ate for dinner?
I don't remember. No, I don't remember.
Well, how about breakfast?
Yeah, I had a really good shake.
Okay. So when I asked you that, you saw pictures of what you ate, maybe where you were when you ate it.
Absolutely. I saw it, yes.
That's how you stored the information about breakfast this morning. No animal can do that. Only humans do that.
How do we know that no animal can do that?
They don't store it. They don't store memory. They learn through repetition and association. But animals don't remember what they just did. That's why you can feed your dog the same thing every day, because he doesn't remember eating that yesterday. So this is a new meal. So he's just present in the moment, excited that he's going to eat, but he hasn't stored that he eats the same thing every day. It's only humans that do that. It's a unique feature. So the problem is when we have a traumatic event, all our senses are heightened: sight, smell, hearing. So how's it going to record that event? High definition, tremendous amounts of detail in a very high beta brainwave state, tremendous amounts of details. So now if your subconscious is operating in the present and it accesses a memory that's stored in high definition and starts to review it, when does it think the memory is happening?
Right now.
And it has to create a physiological response to it. It's designed to do that. It doesn't know it's not real.
So people are experiencing the same loop. It's like Groundhog Day, where maybe consciously there is no trauma, but subconsciously the body is going through the same patterns of like stress hormone release and tightness and inflammation, while the person just living their life like I don't know what's wrong with me and why am I feeling this way, but this is what's happening in the inside on a subconscious level, reliving the trauma.
Yeah, and they'll describe it as a symptom. Oh, I have really bad anxiety, right? I have post-traumatic stress. I have panic attacks. I have whatever. So what they're describing is the symptom of the problem. And everybody's starting to treat the symptom when what I said was, that's not the problem. Let's get to the root. If we can get that high definition memory reprocessed into the same format as to what you ate for breakfast this morning, the mind won't see a threat to that low data, that low information, and it's not going to respond to it. So when I work with people who have gone through a real serious trauma, by the time we're finished, they can give you a complete description of it without shaking and crying,
Beautiful.
because it's not activating the nervous system anymore. Here's something really fascinating. This is something we just did. We've been trying to, during one of the sessions, I wanted to map what the brain is doing as we're doing this trauma process.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so we've been working on it. So we have a device now that will actually measure the brainwave activity. So on Friday, I used it. I didn't put it's a band that they wear around their head. I didn't put it on them until we started the trauma stuff. And I wanted to record that hour of that process. As I was watching it, I thought afterwards, I said, am I really seeing what I think I'm seeing? I know we processed the trauma. I didn't realize how fast it was. And we can show it in the data and the way the brain, it was in a very high reprocessing state in that last 30 minutes. That was so exciting. So when I took the data and I sent it to the guys that are working on the study, they were blown away. They said that's scientifically significant that the brain is reconsolidating in the session to that degree. It wasn't like a little bit. It was like going like this and then went straight up.
Nice.
That's so exciting. I'm telling everybody about it because I thought, did I really see that when I was watching the monitor? And that's exactly what I did see.
It's incredible. If people were just a little bit more aware of what we can do with processes like yours, it would be so beneficial. Like we were just so conditioned to just go and like get, you know, get the pill or well, I bet my listeners are more aware of this. Like anything that is done with the subconscious mind can be so beneficial. What do you think? Why do you think your system is different than other systems? Like, or what is different about it?
I think the key is by the time we get to the trauma, they're so relaxed and focused, the mind feels safe doing restoration. I think it's really the key. Plus, they're all educated now. Because the one thing I hear, Orion, all the time when people, as I'm going through all the education, they'll just go, this is making so much sense to me now. I'm saying, how could you not be anxious if your mind is doing this. It's impossible not to be. So that's why I say there's nothing wrong with you. If I had lived your life the way you lived your life, had the same experiences, my mind would be doing the same thing. It's just the way our brains and our minds work. The same thing with addiction. I talk to people about addiction. I say addiction is not a disease, it's a code. The brain built a code to stop the pain. And so we call it a disease, or we call it that there's something wrong with the person. They keep on reaching for the drug or reaching for the alcohol. And what I say is, well, of course you would, because it stopped the pain. So what you've done now is because you repeated it and your mind found a resource to stop the pain, it goes back to the resource. Of course it would. It has to, because it solved the problem. So all we have to do is let's get the trauma out of the way that started the codes to be built, and then start rebuilding the codes. But it's a lot easier to rebuild the codes when you don't have the trauma activating the nervous system all the time.
Yes. I think a lot of it, beyond the method, is who you are as a person.
Maybe.
I just feel like you're so whole, and you're really good at holding space for people. You make people feel very comfortable. I was lucky enough to have dinner with you, like our family and you, in Orlando last week, and I just like your presence is really incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Like you deeply respect people, and you have this way about you of seeing the best in people. You don't come from ego, you really come from love, and that's what I truly feel about you.
Oh, thank you. That's a big compliment from you. I appreciate that. You've got a great sense of who you are and what you're doing to help people. So that means a lot.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I do, but I do feel like that. That's why I say to absolutely everybody that comes in, there's nothing wrong with you. And even when I talk to people in addiction, I say addiction is not about your character, morals, ethics, or willpower. I've never had a drink in my life. I've never touched a drug in my life. That doesn't say anything about my character. I didn't have their pain. If I'd have had their pain, I'm sure that I would have found a resource to stop the pain. It's human nature not to want to be in pain.
Right. Do you have any advice on how to cure what is considered a minor addiction, but like for me, I really like YouTube Shorts. I sometimes I get hooked. I'm getting so much better. I got my screen time down to 12 minutes last week. I'm very proud of myself. And I know that when I'm tired or bored or wanting my dopamine hit, I will go and I will go back and then I will justify it with oh, this information was so important. I really needed it.
But it's really just coming up with another, like, it's no different than any kind of an addiction. So I had a lady, and I always use this as an example because it's a perfect example. She came in and been on heroin for 7 years.
People can live on heroin for 7 years. I didn't know that.
Yeah, but she was still functioning, but still on heroin. Actually had a job. She continued to lose her jobs, but she would come in and out. But 7 years of heroin addiction. And so when she came in to see me, she said, I told my therapist I was coming in to see me, and he told me that I have to be honest and upfront with you before we start and let you know I have self-destructive behavior. And I just smiled at her and I said, really, what would make you think you're self-destructive? And she was so shocked. She looked at me and she goes, well, I'm sticking a needle in my arm with heroin. Don't you think that's self-destructive? I said, no, I don't. I think you were trying to feel better. And I bet you when you stuck the needle in your arm, you felt better. Now, the substance is destructive. You're not destructive. So your brain has built a code to stop your pain with that needle and that heroin. What if we could show you a better way that you could still get, right, what you're looking for without having to use that substance? You're fully capable of doing it. We got her off.
Wow, that's amazing. How long ago was that?
Let me see. That was 2015, very early on when I first was developing the program. So quite a while ago, almost 8 years ago now.
Wow, that's amazing. Did you follow up with her? Do you know what's up with her now?
I'd seen her a few times, a few years after that. She was still fine. Another really good example is a young lady who was actually in worse shape than her. 4.5 years ago, came in. She was 33. Her testimonial is actually on our site. So I told her, I said, will you allow us to video you going through the program so we can show people what's changing? So she did. And when she first came in, she was on all kinds of stuff, on 7 medications at the same time, but had been on every drug you can imagine, was homeless, was lost her daughter. The courts took her daughter away. Her family had to raise her daughter. So she'd been OD'd twice before I saw her. And when she came in, I did the same thing. I said, Michelle, there's nothing wrong with you and there's nothing wrong with your mind. You've had a lot of trauma. She goes, yeah, how do you know I've had a lot of trauma? I says, because people don't do what you're doing right now unless they're in pain.
Oh.
Right? That's not something you wake up in the morning and think, I think I'll try heroin. I think I'll try cocaine.
No.
Right? That's not going to happen. So I said, if you follow the program, this is just the science I'm going to tell you about how the brain works. You can defeat this. That was 4.5 years ago. She's working full time. She's got her own business. She has her daughter back, reconciled with her family, got married, bought a house.
What? Amazing.
Totally changed her life. She's a great success story. And she followed everything I told her to do. She was like so compliant. She wanted her daughter back. That was her motivation.
Beautiful. Yeah, people need a big why to actually follow through with any process. If they don't have that big why, maybe they won't follow through. I don't know.
It depends. I think they can still do it if they follow the program. But I always say, think about it. If I came to you, Orion, and I said, listen, I want to buy your house. I'll give you $100. You'd say, no, I'm not selling my house for $100. If I said, I'll give you 10 million. Oh, all right. Now you're interested. There's got to be some trade. If somebody's going to give up something, they want to get something in return. So I always ask them, what is the trade? What are you going to give up this drug or alcohol for? It's to get their life back, or for her it was to get her daughter back, to get the respect back from her family. Nobody had told her how to do it. And the only thing they had told her how to do all those years was to watch. She was 17 years in addiction since she'd been 16. She was 33 when I saw her.
That's insane.
And all they told her is you're going to white knuckle this every day. You're going to probably have to go to rehab between 8 and 10 times before you're really going to beat this. I just said, that's nonsense. Right? You can heal. You can stop. You can stop anytime you really want to if you have the tools to do it and you have the motivation to do it. So for her, she was strongly motivated, but you can imagine how discouraging it would be if she just kept falling back. And then what do we do to these people who are in addiction? We shame them. We make them feel guilty, which is why they got into the problem probably in the first place. So they just give up. And it's very hard for them to get out of that hole. What I do is I say to them, you don't have to apologize to anybody. You couldn't have done it any differently based on the experiences you had and the resources that you found.
And can someone take this affirmation and like you're good? It's like you couldn't have done anything worse and just be like, oh well, that's me. I couldn't have done anything better, so I'm just gonna keep doing it.
No, because basically I'm doing it in a positive sense of I'm saying you're responsible for what you did. We're not cutting you off. We're not saying that you don't have to take responsibility. You do. But based on the way your mind was working, how could it have been any different? Your mind couldn't produce different thoughts when it's under that much stress. We don't do our best thinking when we're under stress. So the whole system is under stress because the trauma keeps running. All we have to do is reset the trauma, take the stress out, and then let the healing start.
Right. So people come to your facility and they go through the 4 or 5 hours with you. And then I know there is a possibility to stay and use some things or get some more treatments? How does it work?
Yeah, we have a theta chamber that you use. So when you lie in the theta chamber, it spins and it puts you into a nice, very relaxed theta brainwave state.
Oh, I think I've tried that in the biohacking lab in the Bulletproof lab in Santa Monica. Yeah, it's like a capsule that spins. Oh, it's amazing. You get the theta within 3 minutes, something like that.
You don't even know you're spinning. You feel like you're floating.
I know, I love it. Oh, that was my favorite.
Yeah, we have one in our clinic.
I'm coming to Orlando. I'm coming back to Orlando just to do.
I know. I was telling you. That's why I said when you're at the conference, you should have come over. You could have tried all that stuff.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So we have that. We have our hyperbaric oxygen chamber. We have our PEMF mat.
I actually did that at the biohacking conference. I did the hyperbaric chamber. Well, actually, Stefan and I did that. It was so nice. We were both in the hyperbaric chamber. It was quiet. We had some time to just talk one on one. It was
It's
really nice.
great. It is.
And
And nobody can get in.
we had a date inside the hyperbaric chamber. It was so nice.
That's it.
Yes.
It is. Very, very relaxing. And it's putting more oxygen into your system, which is healing more, bringing down inflammation. It's amazing.
Especially people with brain damage. Like, I can see how it helps their brain rejuvenate.
Traumatic brain injury. My son had, that's how I got into it, is my son had 3 head injuries, and they just kept saying he's got major depression. And I said, no, he doesn't. He has traumatic brain injury. They just ignored me.
I just love how you like redefining those like stuck definitions of depression, whatever label. I just love the way you do it.
Yeah, they're just symptoms, right? Stop treating the symptom, treat the problem. So if you don't get to the problem, you'll never fix it.
Right. So you helped heal your son with hyperbaric chamber with oxygen?
Yep, it definitely helped him. So the more you can do it, the better it is. A lot of these ex-NFL players are starting to discover it from all the head injuries they had. And so Joe Namath, he's a huge, I don't know if you know who he is, but Joe Namath is a famous player from the 60s that talked about he did about 150 treatments. He says he's got the brain of a 25-year-old now. It's amazing, yeah. All that oxygen and blood flow to the brain is incredible.
Yeah, I fainted a few months ago. I was just actually I did the hot yoga that day, and I think I was dehydrated, and never fainted in my life. And I fainted, and I got minor concussion, and for like 2 days, more like a week, I lost my keys. I left my car running. I forgot the model of my car. It was crazy.
But that's what the oxygen does, is it gets more blood flow into the part of the brain that's injured. That's what my son was having problems with. He would get very angry and frustrated because he didn't have enough power. It was like asking him to lift 1,000 pounds. It was like, I can't do it. It's too heavy. But once you get the oxygen in there, then he can start the healing process.
Yeah, but you know what happened to me since that minor concussion? I hear music in a different way. I hear all the notes and like I play children music in the car for my son, and I can hear all the sound effects that I've never listened to before.
Interesting.
It's interesting, annoying, but also interesting. Like I can hear every little thing in the music. Like I need more hyperbaric chamber, I think.
There you go. Well, you got to come up to Orlando, spend a week here, and just sit in the hyperbaric and the theta chamber. And
I will do that absolutely. What is the TIPP method? What does it stand for?
so that's what we call it's the Inspired Performance Program. We called it TIPP because in the word we call it it's a performance program. So we wanted to get you to the tip, the peak of your performance levels. What we did is we didn't want to call it trauma therapy because most people don't want to relate to trauma. They want to relate to performance. So what's interfering with you performing at your highest level? These events and experiences. Then, so I work with a lot of athletes and we've seen amazing results that when you actually release the trauma, you actually affect the ATP and the mitochondria. So now there's more power. And so that power can go to healing, can go to focus, can go to performance, even power. And we've got some really great examples of guys who went through our program and girls with our program and ended up breaking world records and winning world championships. Yeah, if you go on our site, you'll see it. It's pretty incredible.
That's amazing. And what about making money? Do you help people make a lot of money by rewiring their brain?
Yeah, a lot of times. I'll give you another great example of a guy, very successful derivatives options trader, who's making about $2 million a year. So we're not feeling bad for him, right? He's making $2 million a year. But he said, I shut down in the fourth quarter all the time. And that was coming from a trauma. Or he didn't recognize it, but it was coming from a trauma earlier in his life. So once we get the trauma out of the way, he didn't lose his motivation in that fourth quarter. And after he went through the program, he generally says he shut down fourth quarter. This time he worked all the way through to December 15th. He called me on December 15th and said, today's my last day and my best year ever.
Did he send you a gift basket?
No.
Oh, come
I should have
on.
just taken a percentage of the change in revenue. That would have been a great trade.
Yes, yes. Even percentages. I like that. What are some ways of improving our mind and keeping it healthy on an everyday basis?
Well, a lot of the stuff and a lot of supplements can work really well. Omegas and things like that are really good for just lubricating the brain.
Omegas and what specifically? I know omegas are good and blueberries are really good for the brain.
Yeah, any of those antioxidants, things like that are really good. So whatever you can do for brain health is always good. Getting good sleep is really good. If you don't get enough sleep, that can affect the brain. But I'm a big believer in brain training. So the more things that you can listen to that are calming your mind down, allowing your mind to feel safe, that is one of the best things you can do. You take a lot of the stress out. Because we're going to have stress. Stress is something that happens on a day-to-day basis. How do you handle the stress? So you have to learn how to de-stress your world. And that can come something as simple as cleaning out your closet. So that every time you go into your closet, you're not like, oh, such a mess in here, right? Organize your closet, organize your desk, clean out your bedroom. Don't leave things all over the place. Make your kitchen clean and organized. They sound simple, but there's something about, I don't know about you, but I come in and I see everything clean and I'm like, ah, I like that.
No, no, me too. It's just that I have a little one that I still homeschool. And like you leave the room clean and neat and then it's like some days I give up. It's gonna look the same tomorrow. Like, why am I bothering? Yeah, just before our podcast, I was tidying up for an hour and then it looked kind of decent. Not yet up to my standards.
But it does feel better, right, when we can do those things, right? And he's 4, so that makes sense. It's not easy to do with a 4-year-old.
No, no, of course, I'm joking. I mean, like I did do a closet cleanse with a professional like a couple of months ago, and that was amazing. Between me and my husband, we donated 6 or 7 large bags of stuff that we really did not need and can really help someone else.
Yep, absolutely. One of the other little tricks that I tell people, I use this with the golfers that I work with, the professional golfers. When they're out golfing, it's really easy for their mind to wander and start to get into negativity. So what I said is before every round, I want you to write down 3 positive things that are happening in your life right now or that you're looking forward to happening. Could be a vacation or something that you're doing. Write those 3 down and have them prepared. So when a negative thought comes in, right, it's very easy to get stuck on that thought. So what you do is you close your eyes. When you close your eyes, you change the brainwave activity. So what I say is you're going to take it out of gear, close your eyes, put it into neutral. Think about one of those 3 things, right, that you're looking forward to. Then open up your eyes and look at the first thing that you see and describe it. Now you're coming back into the present, and that thought that was distracting is gone.
That's beautiful. I'll take it. I'll use it.
It's shifting gears.
Yes. Any other tips like that?
Yeah, again, just all the kind of the things that you can do. Get used to making changes in your life. So, for example, if you go to a particular grocery store, drive to, if it's the same store, just go to a different one. So what you're doing is you're telling your brain it's okay to make changes, because generally where we get and probably get stuck in patterns and codes. So do things a little bit differently. Change the way you drive to work, the way you do something. And that starts to get the brain into feeling like it's exercising it. You have to think. Because if you just get in your car and you drive to the Publix, right, you know how to do that. You don't have to think. If you have to go to another Publix, you have to go, oh, well, hold on, I got to go right instead of left now, right? I've got to go down this road. And it starts exercising your brain into thinking differently.
Yes, I think part of the reason why I think differently than many people is because I lived in different countries and I traveled so much. I traveled over 40 countries.
Wow.
Yeah, so I experienced different places, different cultures, different flavors, and I'm the type of person that will always try something new if it's safe enough. Um, but yeah, I like new adventures. I like new flavors. Like my husband will like I'm like, look, I made this thing. It's so tasty. You gotta try it. Like the other day we had Ethiopian and I had leftover injera. Um and I decided to make kind of like an injera French toast with egg and spices. And it was so good. And I'm like, dude, you gotta try it. And he's like, no, no, nothing.
He sounds like me.
And I can see, yeah, you guys are quite similar. Um,
And
so
food. I just like the same food.
I challenge you, Dr. Wood, to go try Thai food.
Uh-oh. Oh my gosh. You'll kill me.
Dun, dun, dun.
I could create my own trauma.
No, it might be a really mind-expanding experience.
I don't know. I'm pretty patterned in now. It's be hard to make a change.
Mm,
I just know what I like.
yeah.
Yeah.
One day I'll take you to eat Thai food. I'll
There
beg
you
you
go.
really.
May not eat much.
We'll have a backup plan in case you don't like it.
There you go. That actually happened. I went to a restaurant. These people took me to a sushi restaurant that had no idea that I didn't like. And I said, go ahead and eat. I said, I don't mind. I'll sit here. I'll just have, something to drink. And they said, well, no, you got to eat something. And I said, no, there's nothing on this menu. That sushi restaurant went out to one of the other restaurants and brought in a burger for me.
Oh,
I thought that was pretty good service.
that was great. Were they Japanese? It sounds like something that
Yep.
Japanese will do.
Yep.
Yeah.
They were.
Oh, yeah. That's very typical Japanese. I remember landing in Japan for the first time, and I was just, early 20s. I didn't know anything. First trip out of the country, and I was lost in the subway systems. And I saw this young girl, and I started crying. I was like, I need to go here. And she went about 50 minutes out of her way, walked me to the station, to the right place, and then went back. Like they're just like that. They're very, yeah, it's something really special about their culture.
Yep. Yeah, I was really impressed by that. I thought that was pretty good.
So my next question is about failure and the fear of failure. What can one do in order to overcome that fear?
Again, that's coming back from some experience, right? So the mind is trying to protect you. So when people say to me, well, I sabotage myself, that will come in typically from something where somebody says, I have a fear of failure and I sabotage myself. They're not sabotaging themselves. They think it looks like sabotage. They're actually protecting themselves. So the mind is going to create a workaround to not run into the danger that it was anticipating. So failure is, if somebody has failed in their life, that's one of the things that, again, in my book, The Emotional Concussions, it's one of the things I talk about. Successful people aren't afraid of failure. failure is part of the process of learning how to win. So the best experience, the best advice I ever got was when I was 13, a tennis pro who was teaching me. He said to me, he goes, "Do you really want to be a great tennis player?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to tell you the secret." And at 13, you actually think it's a secret. But what he said to me is, he goes, "Lose a lot." And I said, "I don't understand what you mean. Why would I lose a lot?" He says, "Because you're playing in the divisions that you can win in." He says, "I want you to go your 13, 14-year-old divisions you can win. I want you to play in the 15, 16, and 17, 18-year-old divisions. You're going to lose a lot, but you're going to learn a lot because the game is faster, right? And you're a good athlete. You haven't seen that speed. The more you get to see that speed, you'll adjust." He says, "But you'll never do that if you keep playing in the division." He says, "But you have to be willing to lose a lot." That was the best, not only tennis advice I ever got, but the best life advice I ever got, right? We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fail, right? What did we learn from it? So when I went to play these older kids, I would sometimes have trouble taking a game or two in a set. But what did I learn? I learned that I could actually catch up to that speed, not every time, but enough times. And then eventually, 20% became 30%, became 50%, till eventually that didn't look faster to me anymore. And that was the key to winning.
Perfect. I wish I played tennis at 13 and I wish I had that coach. But thank God you are still like I met you and now we can rewire again.
There we go. We can rewire it. But that was just great advice. One of those I remembered it and I wrote about it in my book.
Amazing. Um, what are your 3 top tips to living a stellar life?
Ooh, good question. Create an environment of safety. Be around people that are safe. So if you can keep that environment around you that surrounds you as safe, that will keep your nervous system. I grew up in that. So it's one of the things that I tell parents, make your home safe. And if you make your home safe, your children will be well adjusted because they're going to get bumped. They're going to get hurt. People are going to, hurt their feelings and hurt them. But as long as they have a place to land, a safe place. See, my wife never had that. She lived in a very traumatic household. So I said to her, "You are in flight all the time. You're not supposed to be." So that would be one thing, is surround yourself with good people that you feel safe around and make that your inner circle. Number 2 is, this is, again, something I talk about too with athletes. I say, this is something I learned from Annie Duke, who's a famous poker player, female poker player. Learn to develop an outcome blind attitude. And what she meant by that is the reason she was such a good poker player is that she knew what cards she had in her hand. She knew what cards she had already played. She knew what the other players had already played. What she didn't know is what was still in the deck and the other players were holding in their hand. So she had to make her best calculation based on her experience of what she should do next. If she made a move to go in and lost, she was outcome blind. I couldn't have done it any better based on what I knew. I'm okay with that. I'm blind to the outcome. And if she won, she didn't get to, "Oh, I'm the best." It was more of, it's a process of win more than you lose. And that's how you become successful in probably most things. There's no 100% success. It's for anybody. I don't care who they are. And then probably the best advice I probably got was really from my dad. And it wasn't really what he said, it was what he did, is how respectful he was to my mother and the way he treated her. He never yelled at her, never raised his voice. And then one time when I was 15, 16, I wasn't yelling or rude, I didn't think. But I said something to my mom, she said something to me, and I went with okay, yeah, whatever. Like just sort of a little sarcastic. And I didn't know he was right there. And when I turned around, he was there. And he said to me, she may be your mother, but she's my wife. And I don't allow anybody to speak to her like that. Now stop it. Right? Just use that kind of respect in your life, whether it doesn't have to be just your wife. It can be your children, it can be colleagues, it can be whatever. But if you treat people with respect, it will pay off. They may not treat you with respect, right? But that doesn't mean we can't still be respectful.
Yes. Yeah. I feel that from you. I think it's part of your charm.
Right? You just got outcome blind. All right, the person, did something to hurt me. Okay, what can I do? Right?
Right. Amazing. Where can people buy your books and where can people find you and how can they work with you?
We are just relaunching the first two books. The first one's called the first one's called You Must Be Out of Your Mind, and the second one is called Emotional Concussions. Those are being launched July 27th. So we're looking for people to start getting engaged in that. We want to get it back up, and then we're launching two more books. My third book is called Don't Mess With My DNA, which talks to parents on how sort of the upbringing I had and what I've learned about parenting. Not that I'm the perfect parent, I wasn't, right? But now knowing how the brain works and how children are affected by their environment, I would have even done it differently, some things. So that book's coming out August 27th. And then the fourth book is a golf book. It's called The 15th Club. And that's going the month after that.
That's amazing. You are so productive.
A lot of work. So we got a new publisher that's launching all these things for us. So we're excited about that.
Cool. And where can people find the books and where can people, and what's your website?
So if you come to, it's all up really on our website. So if you come to inspiredperformanceinstitute.com or drwoodphd.com, either one, you can find me and find the information about the books and all of our programs and how they work.
Yes. Dr. Wood, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I was looking forward to this. This was great.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, listeners. Remember to make your home safe, develop an outcome blind attitude, be respectful to others, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.